it can be inferred from the passage that Garcia would most probably agree with which one of the following statements about the people in the 1930s and 40s. What does Garcia think of them?
Garcia thinks that they're more politically active because they've been born here.
Oh, okay, yes. So that's what they talk about in the second paragraph, right? That's one of the things that Garcia thinks. Also just generally more politically diverse and radical than what other people thought. That was what Garcia said. I mean, I guess there's a lot of things throughout here that we could randomly pick. But, all right, so answer choice A. Some of their concerns were similar to those of the Mexican-American activists of the 1960s and 70s. What do you guys think? Is this weak or strong? It's weak and thus a good answer. Is that what you mean by strong? Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a weak claim and thus a strong answer. Some, it only has to be at least one. This is pretty good. This is lines 7 to 10. Answer choice B. They were more politically diverse. Why is this wrong?
Oh, because it was actually it was like the 1960s and 70s were more politically diverse than the 1930s and 40s, right?
Well,
Like
they might have been.
around.
The other thing is answer choice B is comparing what? The 1930s and 40s to
The 60s and 70s.
60s and 70s, and the whole discussion in the second paragraph is just about what the author and Garcia think of the 1930s and 40s. We don't really make that comparison. I mean, they do say more militant. That's what the author says on line 10, but that's the author talking, so it's hard to say for sure. Morgan?
I didn't eliminate B.
Okay.
I was back and forth between A and B.
Okay.
Because when I was reading it, I read it as, okay, I think the undermining of the thesis thing where Garcia's like undermining himself confused me because I was like, oh, well, Garcia's arguing that they're not diverse, but in the first paragraph he says that they are more politically diverse.
More politically diverse than what, though?
No, not than like the 60s and 70s, but then when you say, I guess I just saw the militant thing and I was like, oh, okay, that must mean that the militant people had really similar views in the 60s and 70s, so like, I don't know. I think it was just the undermining of the idea, and it was hard sometimes to distinguish between Garcia and the author.
Yeah.
So I think, because that's what the author said, that's not what Garcia said, so.
The more militant part.
Yeah,
But,
so I think,
yeah.
yeah.
Even then, though, it sounds like the 60s and 70s were more militant. Does that make them more or less diverse? I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I guess I drew the assumption that if they're militant, that means that like
they're together.
they're commanding and that there's a bunch of them. Like I just,
And so they're
it's such a
unified?
big word. I'm bringing in other things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, one thing here is the phrase when it does come up, politically diverse, is just in reference to what other earlier historians thought. So, in some ways, we don't know necessarily. Okay. Answer choice C. Were they as militant? We have no clue. That's what the author said anyways, that the 19s and 60s and 70s were more militant. Yeah, Niall?
Just about the question, whenever it says it can be inferred from the passage, does that mean usually it's stated in the passage, or you're going to have to put
But
two
it
and two
either could
together?
be stated or you're going to have to put 2 and 2 together.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
And are you usually looking for a weaker claim?
In an inference question, yeah, the weaker it is, the easier it is for it to be something that must be true.
Yeah.
Excellent. Answer choices D and E, you can get rid of them pretty fast. What word? Most. You guys remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most is the word that most frequently makes answers wrong in reading comprehension. Okay? Not always, of course. But we don't know anything about the quantities, so. Okay. Yeah.
For C, you said we don't know anything about it, but I thought I could look at C based on the lines 9 and 10. Makes it by the more militant.
Yes. So a couple things about that. One is it does suggest that the activists who came later were more militant, and so when it says as militant, we're like, well, no, they weren't as militant, they were less, right? The ones in the 1930s and 40s were less militant than the ones in the 1960s and 70s. But technically, I think this sentence was owned by the author, so I'm not actually sure what Garcia even thinks about that.
Okay.
So,
It's sense of, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Any other questions on 23? Okay.